this morning on the Nation newspaper. Right, the story says, not joining Obi, Kwankwaso invalidates suits. Voters in FCT not superior. Okay, and also on the Nation newspaper this morning, we have timeless Tinubu among 100 most influential people. Where is that? Is in the world in Nigeria? You can check that details on the page 5 of the Nation newspaper for this morning. And also on the Nation newspaper, nobody trapped on the collapsed Lagos building. Nobody was trapped on the Lagos collapsed building. Details of that you want to see, says 25 rescued and 7 injured. More details on that story, it's on page 6 of the Nation newspaper. And also on page 5 of the Nation newspaper this morning, Nati says government spends 13 trillion naira on petrol subsidy in 6 years. Find the details on page 6 of the Nation newspaper as well for this morning. And lastly on the Nation newspaper says IMF advocates debt rescheduling for developing nations. Again, that could be a good one for Nigeria if their debt is rescheduled. Find details on the Nation newspaper as well.
Let's check the Daily Sun for you this morning, and this one is leading with polls. Tinubu Atiku continue bitter war. You are a serial loser, unstable politician. President-elect, that's coming from the president-elect to Atiku. You also find this, you can't run away from your past. Fires PDP presidential candidates. So, the war of words continues. Poverty, insecurity situation in Nigeria worrisome. That's according to World Bank. It's not bothered. Senate presidency, ex-lawmakers back zoning to south. The race continues right there. You also find this one, 7 burnt, 18 injured in Lagos-Ibadan Expressway auto crash. Again, gunmen attack Zango Kataf, kill 8, strike Rivers, killed 665, displaced 4.8 million persons in 2022, says NEMA. And we're also getting, the report from NEMA is that perhaps 2023 will also have a huge impact. And it's like saying, let everyone brace for whatever is coming. And that call is also going to state governments across all levels. That we start in placing strong emergency response, strong prevention, mechanism to ensure that when flood or perhaps when the rain start coming and they're heavy, all of these losses that was recorded, that were recorded in 2022 will be minimal.
I think it shouldn't be a call that only the government should eat to. Even as individuals, we should check our structures, our roofs, and do they need bracing? What are those things you need to strengthen facilities around you, maybe your business premises or your habitation where you stay, so that when the floods come, if you need to give drainage to your streets and things like that, create drainages in your streets and all that, you should do that so that you won't be victims of flooding.
Of course, we hope that as you listen, you also take action. Let's check other headlines from the Daily Sun quickly. CBN to mop up funds in dormant accounts, says customers must provide account ownership evidence for reactivation. So in case you have an account, you've not used it in a long while, and you have some cash. So the Central Bank of Nigeria is looking to mop up those funds in dormant accounts. So perhaps it's time for you to reactivate. Some people after my life, Anambra monarch cries out. That's on page 5 of the Daily Sun. But also in the front page of the Daily Sun for this morning, you see a picture right there in Saudi Arabia. The president is not in the country. You understand, he is in Saudi Arabia. You find the picture of the president in the front page of the Daily Sun performing Lesser Hajj. They say Umrah right there in Mecca. And you see beside him the minister for digital communication, digital economy and communication, Isa Ali Partami, and some other delegates or individuals from Nigeria, standing with the president right there in Saudi Arabia. At the end of the 8-day working visit, we hope that the president will be back also. Those are the stories for you in the Daily Sun when you pick a copy.
Alright, and on the Punch newspaper for this morning, the picture is also there of the president, on the Lesser Hajj, and we hope that his prayers for the country will be answered, because I believe he's going to definitely pray for the country on that Hajj. Alright, APC PDP battle for 2 governorship positions, 94 legislative seats. That's on the supplementary elections. Atiku mobilizes support for PDP candidates. APC backs Benani in to upstage Fintiri. IG Alice fears for voter intimidation. Deploys personnel in 2,660 polling units. That's the battle for the supplementary elections. Well, let's keep our fingers crossed. You can find details of that story on page 2 of the Punch newspaper for this morning. And also, Tinubu don't make Time magazine's 100 most influential persons. So that's on page 12 of the Punch newspaper. See the criteria, see all the influential people, see more Nigerians that make that list. CBN to mop up dormant account balances on claimed funds. As I said, advice, if you know you have a dormant account, better do something, reactivate before it's mopped up.
Into dormancy.
Yes, so before your funds are mopped up. Details of that you find on page 20 of the Punch newspaper. The fuel subsidy, oil theft, gap 29 trillion naira, says federal government. That's on page 19 of the Punch newspaper as well. And that's all on the page 9 newspaper of the Punch newspaper this morning. Okay, before I leave the Punch newspaper, we also have there Obi Kwankwaso shared Atiku's votes. Tinubu tells Tribunal. That's on page 12. But how does he know that it's supposed to be Atiku's vote? Well, check page 12 of the Punch newspaper for this morning for more details on that story. Building collapse. Lagos State government stops construction projects on Banana Island. You find details on pages 4 and 5 of the Punch newspaper as well. House leadership, reps elect form 283 member alliance. Details of this tussle you find on page 10 of the Punch newspaper.
And talking about the tussle at the National Assembly, the Guardian newspaper is leading with the story from the National Assembly, particularly at the Red Chamber this time, at the Senate. And you find this one in the front page of the Guardian this morning. Senate presidency, and that's in the Guardian newspaper. Senate presidency, Kalu Akpabio lead, South jostle for Lawan seat. That's in the Guardian newspaper. Senate presidency, Kalu Akpabio lead, South jostle for Lawan seat. Which zone will get the leadership of the Senate, particularly the president of the Senate? Say the APC is still, is yet to conclude on its zoning arrangement. But let's see how that race will turn out, or will pan out right there at the National Assembly. CBN takes custody of dormant funds from banks. You also find this one, accountability concerns trail yearly 63.46 million barrels oil swap deal. You find that also in the Guardian newspaper. Aviation workers threaten two-day warning strike over COS welfare. You find that also in the Guardian newspaper. Drama continues as Obi denies British government apology over detention. Drama continues as Obi denies British government apology over detention. Also still in the Guardian newspaper, the front page, see this picture from the big story of that daily for this morning. It says, beaches for the rich, from solving chronic erosion to privatizing beaches. You find that in the Guardian newspaper, getting about 2 pages of that daily, pages 4 and 5 of the Guardian. Those are some of the stories you find in the Guardian for today.
And on the Vanguard newspaper for this morning, still talking about the poll. I defeated you, Tinubu tells Obi. You've been losing since 1993. That's his reply to Atiku. Then says call for runoff poll is baseless. Details of our story is on page 5. And also on the Vanguard newspaper, UK apologizes to Peter Obi for wrongful detention. We are not aware of British government's apology on Heathrow incident versus Labour Party. Well, you want to know more about that? Check page 6, page 8 of the Vanguard newspaper for this morning. And so many headlines on the Vanguard this morning. One of it is also dormant accounts. CBN slams 2 million naira fine on herring banks. Well, that's on page 19 of the Vanguard newspaper. Police promotion, bribery scandal, panel calls for evidence, vows to do with corporates. That's on page 9 of the Vanguard newspaper. Yesterday we had the news of 3 police officers who were discharged from duty, due to the disciplinary actions meted on them because of their misconduct in Kano State. No local refining, no subsidy remover, no peg, warns. That's on page 9 of the Vanguard newspaper. Also on page 7 says 8 killed as troops intercept cache of terrorist ammunition in Kaduna. Unprofessional conduct. Police dismisses 3 officers that I told you earlier. You find details of that story on page 3 of the Vanguard newspaper. Chibok girls, 9 years after, authorities unable to protect children, says Amnesty International. And details of that is on page 10 of the Vanguard newspaper. 460,000 pounds for feature. You can't rewrite history. Atiku's aide tells Tinubu. That's on page 4 of the Vanguard newspaper. And there we also have some, let me take Mr. and Mrs. for this morning. Mr. says, why is it that whenever you prepare food with your money, it lacks aroma? What a question. The Mrs. replies, since I'm getting my money back, pay me without aroma.
Take your aroma away. That's the summary. Okay. Regardless of me, just pay the money.
Okay, that's it on Vanguard newspaper for this morning.
Alright, let's move from the Vanguard newspaper to check the Daily Trust this morning. And of course, the Daily Trust, the front page captures the interesting times that lies ahead right there at the National Assembly, as some hopeful for the leadership of the National Assembly are taking their campaigns to the papers this morning. But that's not that's not for us to talk about. Let's check the leading stories from the Daily Trust this morning. 98 Chibok schoolgirls still in captivity 9 years after. 98 Chibok schoolgirls still in captivity 9 years after. That's the lead story in the Daily Trust this morning. Freed girls decry stigmatization. We never stopped praying for return of our daughters. That's according to principal. I won't give up till my last day in office. That's coming from the president. Buhari. All missing girls must be rescued. Amnesty International says. Of course, the Daily Trust is also giving a clearer perspective as to the supplementary poll that is to take place in Adamawa State. It says runoff polls, 36,935 voters to decide Fintiri Binani's fate in Adamawa. Will these 36,000 plus people come out? We really hope they do. Other headlines in the Daily Trust. FG spent 13 trillion naira on subsidies in 16 years. Thieves stole 16 trillion naira oil. 13 trillion naira on subsidy. You find saboteurs taking 16 trillion naira oil. Interesting.
Anyway, we're still going to get more interesting arguments on this issue of subsidy.
Particularly now that the House of Reps is also taking a look into the books at this time. We hope they get to a reasonable conclusion, or a conclusion that Nigerians will really say, yes, we've taken steps to cut the shortages, and of course, forestall those who are sabotaging our economy. But with that, Buhari performs Umrah amid tight security in Makkah. That's the angle of the Daily Trust newspaper for the president's journey to Saudi Arabia. Those are the stories in the Daily Trust and more.
Alright, and on Daily Independence this morning, members, that's 10th House of Reps, members elect float coalition to release APC's zoning bid. To realize APC's zoning bid. 283 members, governors, others endorse new forum. Details of that, let's keep our fingers crossed, you'll find on the front page of the Daily Independent for this morning. Ghana first to approve Oxford malaria vaccine. Well, that's a laudable one. You check on page 7 because malaria is said to be the greatest killer, that is killing people, especially children, millions annually. And so now that there is a vaccine for it, let's hope for a healthier generation without malaria. So Ghana has endorsed the use of the Oxford malaria vaccine that is named R21. 2023 presidential election. The Smith's Atiku suit, Tinubu begs presidential election petition court, says former vice president is a serial loser and an unstable politician. Well, this is over. This is on page 29 of the Daily Independent. At 61%, multilateral loans drive rise in external debt. That's according to analysts. We find this is over on page 13. To this, airport harassment. British government yet to apologize to Obi. Labour Party insists. Find details on page 7 of the Daily Independent as well. And also on the Daily Independent this morning on page 7 still, 2 million Nigerians benefited from 2022 poverty growth strategy projects, says federal government. World Bank lists challenges before Nigeria's incoming administration. Well, what are these challenges? You find details of that. It's also on page 7 of the Daily Independent. And right, the story says, drops growth rate forecast. This is the forecast for the growth rate for the nation. Let's see. You check the Daily Independent for this morning for details to that story.
Let's check the Friday edition of the Leadership for you today. FG puts states on red alert over impending floods. That's on page 4, but of course there are interesting riders to that headline. It will likely be worse than 2022. 80% of 774 LGAs to be affected. Who knows the 20? Of course, the 80%, there are already indications that yes, there are likelihood of so areas to be affected. Even here in Ondo State, you have some areas that are flood prone, and we just hope that concerted efforts are geared towards ensuring that the alert is yielded. Stakeholders engage to mitigate risk. So that is also taking place here in Ondo State. But let's check Adamawa again. Is also in the front page of the Leadership. Adamawa rerun poll. Time ticks for Fintiri Binani. You check that story in the Leadership for this morning. You also see this one in the camp of the All Progressives Congress. APC holds governorship primaries in Bayelsa, Kogi, Imo today. Yes, you want to know how many candidates will be, or aspirants will be jostling for the ticket of the party in those 3 states. You check the Leadership newspaper, page 10. Commission probes alleged $10,000 bribe for promotion in police. That's huge. $10,000 bribe for promotion. We hope the probe will get to its end and perhaps we'll find those who are culpable. Lagos stops work on collapsed building. 25 workers rescued. That's about the 7-story building that collapsed in the Banana Island area of Lagos during the week. British Commission declines comment on Obi's detention by UK immigration. You see that story also in the Leadership newspaper for today.
And on the Nigerian News Direct, it says, World Bank lists anti-growth policies frustrating Nigeria's economy. I think we also read that in some of the headlines that we've taken previously. Here, the Nigerian News Direct is stating those things that may cause the slower growth rate of Nigeria in the next administration. Highlights insecurity, dependency on oil and others as one of the factors that could inhibit growth in the next administration. That lowers GDP projection growth to 2.8%. Well, I think that's how much we'll take on the Nigerian News Direct for this morning. There are more headlines there. Just get a copy and check the details.
Yes, let's also tell you here in Ondo State, the government has assisted rainstorm victims in Shupari, Akoko, and Akoko Southwest local government area. That event took place yesterday. The acting governor was also at the venue to hand those materials to the people of Shupari. That's also part of the happenings in the environment. You remember Ayedu also. Some places in Accra were also affected by rainstorm. We've gotten theirs, but we hope that preventive measures that we can take will definitely intensify them. Let's check sports before we close shop on the check on the dailies. Chukwueze to Madrid, Milan. I'm not for sale to IS bidder, and that's coming from Sporting Sun. That's the Nigerian international. I think his goal against Real Madrid is putting him in the limelight at this time. Kante, I'm fully fit. That's Chelsea player the midfielder. You also see this one. Bayern suspends Mane. You find those stories and more. Of course, the action in the Europa League yesterday, Manchester United played 2-2 draw against Sevilla at the Old Trafford Stadium. You also find Juventus also gaining a 1-goal victory against Sporting PC right there in the Europa League. Those are the stories you find and more when you pick a copy of the Sporting Sun. When we come back after this break, we'll take a look at developments in the health sector. Please stay.